$1 million on DK. And I want to start off with this question where it came from Aiden on Twitter. He says, can we talk about leveraging ownership in the Millionaire Maker? Where do you think the public goes? I thought that was a great way to kind of start off this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in general, a lot of the ownership's going to lie within the title fights, the 5-round fights, and some other fighters that are priced up in that 9K, high 8K range that are 3-round fights could be overlooked. And, we can get into it.
And of course, obviously, we're all going to talk about the change that has happened over the past couple of days. Jorge Masvidal in, Gilbert Burns out due to COVID. Unfortunate situation, but ultimately, at the end of the day, as fight fans, we get the fight that we're looking for. Of course, we're going to break down all these fights, answer your questions. Start leaving those questions right now in the chat. We'll get to those questions as we do go on, Pete. But obviously, the main event is Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. One of the interesting things in the pricing of this was they kept the same exact pricing when it was going Gilbert Burns on DK at $7,300, also on FanDuel at $18. Kamaru Usman has been a DK stud, but obviously there's definitely a clear path. But I think one of the questions I want to bring up about Masvidal is, could Masvidal's popularity, especially in the casual fan base, actually cause his ownership to be actually a little higher than we expect?
Yeah, so absolutely. I'm excited for this fight. I was excited for the Burns and Usman fight, and I'm even more excited about this matchup. It's very intriguing, and especially, with the quarantine, Masvidal has been helping Dustin Poirier get ready for his fight, and, Luis Pena get ready for his fight. So he's been training actually throughout this entire quarantine in hopes of a situation like this happening. I think the popularity of Masvidal will inflate the ownership, and I think that he's going to be one of the most popular values at 7,300. If you really think that he goes out there and puts Usman away and does what nobody has been able to do in the UFC, then, you have a steal at 7,300. For me, I like Usman based on his toughness, his potential, his ability to push the pace. And I think the pace is what is really the difference maker here. Masvidal definitely has the striking advantage and has better hands and a good, nice round kick. But in terms of overall game, I think Usman's going to be able to put him against the cage and just weigh on him a little bit. He's a big guy and work those takedowns. If he can take him down to Takedown City, Jason, we could be looking pretty at 8,900. I really don't understand why Usman's not priced up. I think in the high 8K range with his potential and his history. I mean, he averages 113 DraftKings points per fight. That's insane. I think it's a steal here for Usman.
Obviously, when we talk about keys to victory, you mentioned about Usman taking Masvidal to Takedown City. What do you think it is a key for Usman to get the takedowns? And on the other side, what do you believe that Jorge Masvidal has to do to keep the fight on the feet?
Okay, so I really hope Usman doesn't believe that he's some striker now since he's been training with Trevor Whitman and working with Justin Gaethje and thinking that he can take a shot because he's taking it from Gaethje. I don't want him to fall in love with his hands. If he falls in love with his hands, then you really could be looking at Masvidal, potentially getting the victory here because, Usman's taken out of his game. So, I mean, that's an X factor is how is Usman going to translate the new training camp into the cage? How is he going to respond to Trevor Whitman's, entire basic game plan? And for Masvidal, he's got to keep it on the feet because Usman's going to be looking to get in tight and press him against the cage. Anytime that Masvidal throws a hook, you should be looking to work on getting an underhook and pressing him against the cage. He needs to definitely move his head because if he stays there stationary like he was against Colby Covington at some times, absorbing 140 significant strikes, that's not a good game plan against Masvidal who can crack. Easier said than done, but I like Usman's side here at 8,900.
One of the questions that something I kind of want to bring up, and we got this from FK Coolers there in the YouTube chat. He goes, I might take 0 Masvidal in GPP and take my chances. And I think this kind of goes in line of, are you a single entry player or are you a multiple lineup? Now, we're both obviously multiple lineup players. I'll have a lineup with Masvidal, clearly. I'm going to have more shares of Usman just because I just think the ceiling is so high for Kamaru Usman. You look at all of his main events, they've all made it to the 5th round. Only the fight against Colby is where he got the finish. But as we mentioned, he's a DK stud. I feel like for Masvidal, in a way, I feel like it's boom or bust. You talk about how I believe a key for him is he's got to keep his foot off that center line. You think about the octagon, that black line that you see.
Yeah.
Don't allow his back to get behind that, because that's where I feel like Usman will get in the clinch, and that's where he's able to score the takedowns. I mean, like, if you're an Usman backer, to me, it's about get the takedown, keep him there, advance on the ground, rinse, repeat for 25 minutes.
Yeah, I love that game plan from Usman. If he goes that route, if he tries to stand and prove something against Masvidal, then you could be looking at a lower score than what we're accustomed to from Kamaru Usman. If he goes to the takedown, well, the guy has scored 42 takedowns in 11 fights. And in each of those takedowns, he has 41 total advances, which is pretty crazy. If he takes you down, Masvidal's good enough to get back to his feet, but I think they keep doing it similar to the RDA fight over the course of 5 rounds. And that pace, and now he's at elevation. I think Kamaru Usman at elevation is pretty scary. The guy has cardio for days, but he has been wobbled and hit in the past by some fighters that aren't on the striking level of Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal has wins. He has 18 finishes himself. He could definitely get this fight done, and he can win convincingly. But I think more times than not, Kamaru Usman goes in there and coasts to a victory.
This is a fight that came together on, 6, 7, 8 days notice, kind of when all this thing came around. And, I try to think of who benefits from it. I think overall, I think it's Masvidal, because, I mean, look, say what you want. He was preparing for Kamaru Usman when he was working with all these wrestlers, but also his head coach, Mike Brown, is not there because he tested positive for the coronavirus. So, like, I see both sides of it. Also, like, I was talking to Peter Barrett, who's a UFC fighter. He's got a fight come up here in August. And I was asking him, I was like, hey, man, why do you think we're seeing a high rate of finishes, in quarantine UFC life? And something he brought up, and I'll get your thought. It's a cardio issue. Guys kind of feel that, hey, I don't have the gas tank to go where it's all 3 or all 5 rounds. So they're going for it a little bit more than they normally would.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of, it's like a sprinter's mentality, and a lot of people going out there, and as soon as the bell rings, they're going right for it because they know that they have a limited time for their gas tank. I wouldn't say this applies to either one of these guys for this fight. And I think Masvidal is going to surprise some people with how good of shape he's in. Dustin Poirier mentioned it in an interview, saying he helped me so much, and he was a tremendous help for my fight camp. As far as this fight, man, I'm excited. I really am. And if you think of Usman being 11-0 in the UFC, he's really in that elite territory. Even a win over Masvidal here, who's 12-6 in the UFC, but has so much stock behind his name and so many people know who he is. I think it can really elevate Usman's value overall and his career.
Look, I mean, you're supporting that Fight Island shirt. You're going all in on this.
I tried, man. I tried my best to get as many shirts as I can, and luckily they came in on time.
That cartoon poster they came up with was pretty cool. I think I'm going to fork over to $50 and put that in the home office.
Yeah, see, I mean, they're marketing this the right way, and this is the start to a ton of great cards. We're going to be pretty busy, so if you guys have nothing to do, make sure you guys join us each time, because we're going to be busy here and trying to win as much money on DK as possible.
Yeah, the next time that we do not have a UFC event during a week will be September. Labor Day weekend is the next time we go a week without UFC. As we should know, so we got strategy show here tonight. Saturday we'll have live before lock.
Yeah.
Then we'll be back on Monday for a strategy show for next Wednesday's show. Next Wednesday, Dan Ige and Calvin Cater, and then of course Wednesday we'll have live for lock. So Pete and I will be all over Awesemo here over the next couple of days. But let's move on to the co-main event of Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway. Volkanovski, of course, won the first matchup, a decision win, utilizing those leg kicks. He's 9,100 on DK, $18 on FanDuel. You're paying the same price on FanDuel for Volkanovski as you are Jorge Masvidal. I think that's something they kind of put out there. On SuperDraft, he's 1.2 times. Max Holloway, 7,100 on DK, $16 on FanDuel, and 1.5 times. So let me get the fire perspective on this one. You're in the Max Holloway coaching because apparently they're just training on Zoom. I don't know how many of us actually believe that. But what would be your advice to him on how do you stop the leg kicks that we saw last time for Volkanovski?
It's tough because it's very hard to get used to checking leg kicks if you're so accustomed to going forward all the time, and that's really what Max does is he presses forward a lot with a ton of volume. He throws so many significant strikes, like 6 strikes a minute, and every time Volkanovski would initiate it, initiate action, and Holloway would even look to counter. Those leg kicks to inside and outside were there for him all day long. And even when Max Holloway switched stances, you saw Volkanovski make the adjustment and start tearing up that right leg instead. You're going to get leg kicked by Volkanovski, and that's just the truth. And the guy has a pole wrapped, and all he does is crack that pole with leg kicks with his coach. So, I think it's just a strength of Volkanovski, not so much a weakness of Max Holloway. And I think that Holloway is going to look to change that. And maybe when he does get leg kicked, he tries to answer more with hands. I don't know if he goes the whole I'm going to check every kick route because it's very tough to do that. It's a timing issue. It's not so much a technique issue. And, you know, every single Holloway's a rhythm fighter. And when he gets into a rhythm, he's very, very dangerous. And you can kind of just see he starts to really pile on the numbers and the combinations. And every time he started to do so, Volkanovski would leg kick him and disrupt his rhythm. And that's very, very detrimental to overall performance for Max Holloway because it's like he just feels like he can't get going. Like as soon as he starts, he's getting cracked and eaten up, and now his leg's not under him. I'm expecting the same thing. And as much as people are talking about the adjustments Max Holloway can make, what about the adjustments Alex Volkanovski can make? You think he's just going to go out there and have the same game plan? Because it's not going to happen. I think he's a little irritated and believes he can do better in a performance and get a better victory over Max Holloway. That's a little bit more convincing. At 9,100, you're paying a premium for him, but I do like him here. He's 8-0 in the UFC. And sometimes fighters just have your number. And I think Volkanovski is a very tough matchup for Max Holloway.
I look at Max Holloway as the best punt play of the week.
I think you and every single other person out there is thinking the same thing too. And I don't hate it because, listen, Max Holloway is my guy. I like Max Holloway a lot. The volume's there. He's a legend for the 145-pound division. He really is. But let me tell you, the most popular build will be Usman, Holloway, and Yan. And that's where people are basically going to do because you're not going to want to avoid the title fights in your lineups. You can maybe avoid one in hopes that it works out for you, but you can't avoid any more than that based on the 5-round potential. So I think that's the popular build is putting Holloway in there. Maybe Masvidal's popularity inflates that as well, but Holloway's volume, and you look at his previous scores. I mean, he's averaging 91 DraftKings points per fight, and at 7,100, even in a loss, he can basically go out there and get you a very nice score in the 90s and definitely pay off his price tag.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where I think if you think this fight's going to go 25 minutes and you fully believe that's just going to stay on the feet, that 7,100 price tag is going to be, very appealing. But I think you bring up a great point. It could be a very chalky play. Masvidal is probably going to be a very chalky play. Hell, Jose Aldo could be a chalky play, and we're going to talk about that momentarily, just because of the name. But what scares you about that, we'll talk about it, is a lack of volume. That's really what scares you with that. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button here on YouTube. And we are presented by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo10, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Of course, so we're talking about UFC Fight Island, and of course, Fight Island is here. And get a Awesemo Plus MMA Platinum monthly pass for $20. Sign up now by heading to awesemo.com/join and use a promo code island to take advantage of that offer. And of course, we do got the giveaway going on with the podcast channel. Check out the pinned tweet on Awesemo_com on Twitter handle for a chance to win an Awesemo Plus monthly pass. This gives you access to all the premium content, tools, and projections on Awesemo.com for 30 days. All you have to do is subscribe to the Awesemo podcast channel and leave a 5-star review with your Awesemo username or Twitter handle included. It's that easy. One lucky random winner will be announced this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Good luck. Of course, get all of Alex's great projections to help you build that lineup for the Millionaire Maker. Of course, Pete's his spreadsheet that you see right now on the screen, you can see it there as well. But of course, the other title fight, Pete, is Jose Aldo and Peter Yan. Peter Yan, 9,300 on DK, $19 on FanDuel, 1.2 times on SuperDraft for Jose Aldo. He's 1.55 times on SuperDraft, $14 on FanDuel, and 6,900 on DraftKings. I think one of the things that stuck out to me about Peter Yan is the fact of, when you look at his wins in the UFC, only 2 of those wins have come against fighters that are currently in the top 15. That's Jimmy Rivera, who's number 9, John Dodson, who is number 13. For Jose Aldo, whether you thought he won or lost that fight, whether he should be in this fight, I think the thing that concerns me about Jose Aldo is, even though he is talking about how he's never going to let the fight go to decision again, what concerns me is, if this thing does go 25 minutes, is there enough volume?
Yeah, it's a legitimate question. And if you think about Aldo and Yan, Peter Yan has been 5 rounds in the past in his previous promotion, and Aldo's been 5 rounds. But in the 5-round bouts that we've seen of Jose Aldo, he hasn't really looked, incredible cardio wise. It's always kind of been a slight worry for me. And now he's at 135 pounds, which I don't understand how he'd have more cardio. I mean, I don't understand that. Maybe he says he feels better, and I think maybe he's got a nice program behind him. You mentioned Peter Yan. He has a ton of potential, man, and I'm in love with the potential, and I think a lot of people are. So they're going to be plugging him in their lineups. But the problem is who is Peter Yan really defeated? That's on Jose Aldo's level. Jimmy Rivera, he was struggling against Jimmy Rivera and was basically getting beaten to the punch. Jimmy Rivera looked like he was winning that fight. And, then he ends up, rocking Jimmy Rivera and dropping him several times to basically steal the rounds back and gets a victory. If he didn't drop him, he would have lost that fight by decision, 100%. I mean, you could do this if this didn't happen for every fighter. But on tape, from what I'm seeing, Peter Yan has an amazing record, and it's almost like I don't know, his popularity could be inflating a lot of his ownership as well. I saw him get rocked against Uriah Faber. John Dodson cracked him and wobbled him a little bit. The guy has great defensive striking and tends to avoid getting hit with big shots. But it does seem like every fight he does get cracked one time and wobbled. So what happens if he's really faced with some adversity from Jose Aldo, and Jose Aldo really just goes out there and hits him with a combination? I think Jose Aldo can get a nice victory here at 6,900. And I know that, the popular play and what my brain's telling me is pick Peter Yan and move on. But I'm going to say, a little bit of myself. My heart's telling me to take a few lineups with Jose Aldo at 6,900. It's going to be a stand-up battle, right? And his lack of volume, it's not on his volume's not on the same level as Holloway. So you can't compare the two. But I think there's more of a potential for a finish from Jose Aldo than you would say Max Holloway. I think Jose Aldo can go in there and hurt Peter Yan. The guy is notorious for his finishes and has 18 of them. What's saying that he can't go in there and hurt Peter Yan, who's relatively inexperienced on high-level competition?
Let me put it to you this way. When you look at the 3 favorites in the title fights, will Peter Yan have the lowest ownership?
I don't think so. I think Volkanovski might. I think because people are going to be playing Holloway, man. People want that volume guy where even in a loss, people don't stack too often. I don't stack a lot. But they're going to have Holloway in a lot of lineups based on his potential and how, it was a close fight. So if he did get that victory, what would his score look like? 120 points? So either one of they're great values there. For me, I think Aldo can do it. I really do. And I know that he's basically being brought in here to lose. I think they want to market Peter Yan as their next big thing. And it makes sense because he looks like a terror in that division. But he just beat a 40-year-old Uriah Faber. And he's so patient with his striking that I wonder if his volume doesn't really accumulate to a lot of points. He does hit you with some deceptive strikes and ones that you don't see coming. So that's how he gets these flash knockdowns against his opponents. But he's not really the best finisher. I mean, he's 14-1 with 7 finishes. That's okay. I mean, it's nothing crazy.
There was a question in the chat, and I'm sure a lot of people are having this thought, and this came from Zane. He goes, should I put Yan, Usman, and Volkanovski in one GPP lineup on DraftKings? Now, just to if you put those 3 out there, that means you have $7,500 left on the average for your other 3 spots on your roster.
Yeah, it's tough. This is going to be a very tough card because there's so many options and so many ways these fights can go. And the tricky part is you don't just have one title fight where you know you need that fight and then you can kind of mix and match. You got 3. So you got 3 fights that are kind of must-haves, or at least 2 of them. If the optimal lineup only has 1 of them, I will be absolutely surprised. I think the safe approach is pick 2 of your favorite and, move on. For me, from a DFS perspective, the Yan and Aldo fight is probably my least favorite for DFS. But in saying that, I'll have plenty of Aldo lineups.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, I would say I think you got to roster the main event. Because if Usman gets the takedowns, that could be a massive score. That could be a huge score. Volkanovski, Holloway, you pretty much feel, however, whether it goes 25 minutes or less, you feel, hey, it's going to stay on the feet. Both guys are going to be able to rack up points on the feet. That's why I kind of look at Peter Yan, Jose Aldo might have a little lower ownership, but the question is can either one of them, score enough? Let me, we don't, this is something we don't like to do, but I think you just mentioned a second ago, stacking fights. If I was going to stack any fight, I would stack Volkanovski and Holloway.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could tell the Usman Masvidal fight's going to be grappling heavy, in Usman's favor. Volkanovski, Holloway, if it stays on the feet, I just don't see Holloway being able to take these shots over and over and over, Jason. I mean, what I tell you the stat was, Max has absorbed in his past 4 fights, listen to this, 541 significant strikes. Think about that. His past 4 fights. Eventually, that's going to catch up to you, and you can only take so many shots on your chin, and it's going to start to abandon you. Yan and Aldo, I think, could be a sneaky stack because people will have your same mentality of the Volkanovski Holloway needs to be stacked over the other fights.
Milan brings this up in the chat. He says, Holloway, Yan, Usman is going to be chalky, but you have to get different within the last 3 people.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned that, right? I think that's the most common build. And in order to basically differentiate your lineups and kind of put your mind where other people will and where casuals will be, that's what they're going to do. They're going to get the takedown guy who scored 150 to 180 points in Usman because of the potential. They'll take Holloway because he's thrown nearly 200 significant strikes in previous performances, and he just lost a fight and still scored 90-something points in a loss. So what's to lose there? They think it's a close fight. Same thing's going to happen. And they know that Peter Yan's a highly touted prospect that could get rid of the washed Jose Aldo. But if you look at Jose Aldo's last performance against Marlon Moraes, he looked pretty damn good. And, outside the first opening head kick, he looked really good and was able to – he looked almost like reinvigorated. And I know it's crazy because he's a weight class lower, but this guy did dominate at 145 pounds. Maybe this power and maybe this experience starts to translate, and he really just annihilates this whole division, and he becomes the next 2-time champ.
Be sure to hit that thumbs up here on YouTube. It does help us out a lot. Scott asked a question. Pick 2 of the favorites and 1 underdog in the title fights.
Okay, so if I had to do that, 2 of the favorites, I'm going to go Usman and Volkanovski, and then I guess if I have to pick an underdog in a title fight, I'll go Jose Aldo.
I would go Usman and Peter Yan and Holloway as the underdog.
I
You must
respect
have forgot.
it. I respect it.
Next up, we've got a rematch of a title fight the first time around. Now it's just a 3-round fight. Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. Rose Namajunas, a big favorite in this one. She is 9,000 on DK, 17 on FanDuel, 1.25 times on SuperDraft for Andrade. She's 1.5 times on SuperDraft, $13 on FanDuel, 7,200 on DK. Of course, the first fight, I think we naturally kind of think about that slam, but you got to go back to that first round where Rose was piecing her apart in that first round. And one of the things when I was watching, I want to say it was one of the embedded shows earlier this week where Trevor Whitman is talking about how essentially Pat Barry has really been the head coach for this one. Fiance of Rose Namajunas has really been working on her kickboxing aspect of this, which, I think the question has got to be is if you're Jessica Andrade, I got to imagine that you want to get into a phone booth type fight to you because clearly she's going to have a power advantage where maybe she tries to get this fight to the ground. What's your take on this fight?
Yeah, so if you look at the Namajunas Andrade fight, it was an incredible, fight, and Namajunas looked, like a world champion for round one, and she looked great. She was piecing up Andrade from the outside, great straight punches, good fakes, good footwork, and I think her footwork is key to her success here in this fight against Jessica Andrade. Because if she stays in front of Andrade reminds me of like a female John Lineker, and I keep saying that every single time we have her on the card, where she throws bombs and has heavy pressure. It's almost like she just throws hooks. So it's pretty easy to see and get out of the way. Andrade does have takedowns in her back pocket that she can resort to if she is finding trouble or, getting lit up on the feet. And you did see that in the first fight with them. Rose Namajunas was picking her apart and really bloodied her up pretty early. So I think Namajunas is the popular play. If she has been working her kickboxing with, Pat Barry, which I heard on the embedded as well, and she starts to implement some kicks that we did see on the Ultimate Fighter, she has some great kicks. And against a fighter in Jessica Andrade who keeps her hands pretty low, I think she could get head kicked and finished. But outside of a big shot, Rose Namajunas, she's 9-4. She only has one knockout win, Jason. She usually gets her wins by, submission, even on the Ultimate Fighter. So to go in there and think that she's going to put away Jessica Andrade because of one good round, what about round two when Namajunas came out and looked a little flat? She looked tired. And, Jessica Andrade was really starting to bury those kicks into her thigh and chew her up with some leg kicks, get inside and press her against the cage because Jessica Andrade, pressing you against the cage, I think she could take you down, Jason. And I'm serious. Like, she's really, really good. It doesn't matter. I think she could take down a lot of guys. And that's the potential here. I mean, she has 35 takedowns in 16 fights and 34 advances to go with that. So if Namajunas doesn't land the perfect shot, I like Andrade's chances here at 7,200. And where other people are taking the underdogs in the title fights, I'll pivot a little bit to Andrade and hopefully that she can get it done for me.
I know a couple people have asked this in the chat. It is back to the bigger cage, 30-foot cage. So that is definitely something to play into the line there. With this being a rematch, who has the advantage in the rematch?
Psychologically, Andrade, for sure. Namajunas, no offense, but she does seem like she's been somewhat of a head case in her UFC career where it's almost like the moment gets too big for her. And I think that she will perform better as a challenger rather than a champion. I know this isn't a title fight, but that mindset where some people are built to be champions and they just seem like they get better and they improve when they are a champion. And I almost think for her, it was too much stress on her shoulders. And she spoke of it, how she felt relieved, and then she retired. So this whole retirement talk is worrisome as well. The thing with Andrade is she's so easy to hit. I mean, she gets hit with 5 strikes per minute. Her striking defense is only 51%. So it's a close fight. I don't know if I would prioritize this fight because I think it does go all 3 rounds and, the potential could be limited. I think they'll both have moments. Based on Namajunas' footwork, you could see a little less production than you are accustomed to.
One of the comments in the chat from Kingslayer says, let me get if you agree with this. Andrade is a great underdog to pair with Volkanovski.
I'm going to do it in plenty of my lineups. Do I feel good about it? Not really, because my head's saying that Namajunas is focused again. She went out to Minnesota to work with Greg Nelson on, get back to her roots, she was saying. And if I were to think of Rose Namajunas back to her roots, it's hands and legs and then like flashy submission attempts. And, hunting that Kimura like she did against the cage is what ultimately got her slammed on her head. And she got lucky twice with it. And the third time, led to her getting knocked out. I don't see the same thing happening for Jessica Andrade, but I do see Andrade being able to get inside that distance and bob and move her head side to side, get her against the cage, and take her to Takedown City. Not a fight I'm not in love with this fight, honestly, from a DFS perspective, but I have to take a shot on some fighters, and I don't mind Jessica Andrade.
Got 25 minutes here left in the program. The end of the program, we will give our picks for all the fights once we get through it. But let's talk about the opening fight of the pay-per-view. Amanda Ribas taking on Paige VanZant. Amanda Ribas, a huge betting favorite in this one. She's over a 9-1 betting favorite. She's 9,500 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, 1 times on SuperDraft for Paige VanZant, 1.7 times on SuperDraft, $10 on FanDuel, 6,700 on Paige VanZant. When the betting lines open for this one, she was a 3-1 betting favorite, and it just that line got pounded and pounded and pounded. Now it's a 9-1 favorite. I think two things. I think the question is, I think everyone's going to be on Amanda Ribas. I think my only question is, does she get the finish? I think that's the question. But let me circle to the other side of this. How does Paige VanZant win?
Paige VanZant scrambles well, and she's tough and gets by on her toughness. I really don't feel like she's the most skilled fighter in the female division. You have Ribas at 90, points, DraftKings points per fight, which priced up at 9,500 isn't the best thing to see. You want to see a little bit more production at that price tag. I think the route of victory for Paige VanZant is getting like a flash knockdown and then following up some ground and pound. I don't see her submitting Amanda Ribas. Ribas has good takedown potential as well, because Paige VanZant has been taken down 20 times in her past 8 fights. So that's a decent amount. And in 3 fights, Ribas has 5 takedowns and 7 advances. So I like Ribas here. It's tough trying to configure a lineup, but I'll have a lineup with Ribas based on the potential. I just don't know if a finish happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think that and obviously it's the last fight for Paige VanZant on her UFC deal. I don't think that really. Yeah. I don't think a win or loss really means much. I think we all I think the writing to me is on the wall. Her husband, Austin Vanderford, he's got 1 fight left on his Bellator deal. There's been a lot of speculation that ultimately it's going to be a package deal. And I think everyone kind of believes that she'll end up in Bellator. But yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's my only fear in taking Amanda Ribas is she gets a decision win, and she's priced at 9,500 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. On SuperDraft, she's not even in consideration on SuperDraft for me.
Yeah, I mean, 9,500 is a hefty price tag. And honestly, I think like a Kamaru Usman should be there, because he's shown that he can get us like 150 points. And Ribas has really only shown that she can get, upper 90s. So, it's just, if she doesn't cash, could she beat the brakes off of VanZant for 2.5 rounds and get a late finish? Sure, she could definitely. And I think that you could see a big star in Ribas moving forward.
Yeah, if you think somehow that Paige VanZant can pull this thing off, and you think she's going to win by finish on SuperDraft, put her in that captain spot 2.55 times.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's the most likely outcome she gets a finish. But I also don't see how she can beat Amanda Ribas for 3 rounds either. I'm guessing something fluky or crazy has to happen for Paige VanZant to get a victory here. If she does at 6,700, you're looking at, she's going to break the slate, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, Myron Ash says, he goes, I'm wondering if VanZant is going to be more focused for this fight. Seems like she has more worries about being an IG model than fighting. Look, you have to understand, that's the way she makes money. When this is a fighter who's not been super active, and because of her social media following, she has a revenue source that's there. So you can't blame her for doing that.
No, I mean, she thinks she can make more money, and she probably can. I just think the UFC realizes that she's really not all, what she's cracked up to be. You know what I mean? Like, she's not going to reach that potential that they thought early on in her career.
Now, the next two fights, your two top fights on the prelims, I feel like when you talk about fights that I think will likely end up in the optimal lineup, I like these two fights to end up in the optimal lineup. First, we got Volkan against Yuri, and then Dos Santos versus Salikhov. First off, let's talk about Oezdemir and Yuri. Yuri making his UFC debut. Like, when I think of Volkan, to me, the path to victory is make this a grappling fight. I know you're not a grappler, but I
knew
just
you were
don't
going to
think
say that. I knew you were going to say that.
I know like, to me, that's the clear path to victory for him to put himself in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. But you're talking about a guy in Oezdemir who only has 2 takedowns in 8 fights and only 2 advances. Does he have that in his back pocket? I guess. But do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, you're talking about Yuri Prochazka coming into the UFC, 0 UFC fights, but a very, very impressive 26-3 record. Oezdemir, who's 17-4, has a 5-3 record, fought for the title against Daniel Cormier, probably a little premature. But, the guy's somewhat of an upper echelon gatekeeper for that division. And I think that, you think he just beat Rakic. And some people think that he beat Dominic Reyes in that fight. So the guy can obviously take a shot. He does have some cardio questions. I think you're right in saying this fight gets finished. I don't really think Oezdemir is all that good, though. But in saying that, he might be good enough to crack Yuri Prochazka here and get the finish, because Yuri, in all the fights that I've seen, this guy, he gets wobbled like almost every fight that I've seen. But he does throw at reckless abandon. So maybe this is the type of 7K punt that you want in your lineup, because if he wins, he's getting a stoppage over Volkan Oezdemir. I think more likely than not, Oezdemir here at 8,400 gets it done. And his power proves to be a little bit too much against a guy who just got some wins against some people that are somewhat undersized over in Ryzen.
I look at Yuri, I think on all 3 platforms, he's a great play. Just because, look, if he's winning by knockout.
Yeah.
I would be relatively surprised if this fight goes 15 minutes.
Not me. I feel like it could go all 15 minutes based on the experience of Oezdemir and the fact that he's somewhat patient. Oezdemir only throws 4, I guess it's okay, 4 significant strikes per minute. But he's somewhat tentative if you watch him, and he doesn't necessarily feel like he's going for the finish. He does have some impressive wins against some guys that have been knocked out quite a lot in the UFC. So, maybe his his record appears to be better than it actually is. I think the safe play here is Oezdemir at 8,400. I think he's going to be a little bit too much for the newcomer.
Then, of course, you got Dos Santos versus Salikhov. This is a fight that I don't think it's going 15 minutes. These two guys like to strike, but when you've seen Dos Santos in these fights where he's going up against a guy what strike, he can go to his grappling. I feel like you're going to see him do that here, but man, Salikhov he's a dangerous striker.
Yeah, so this fight's very interesting, and just like every week, this price range, I hate it because it's so tough to call. The 8,200, 8,000, so tough to call. But Salikhov's really good, and the King of Kung Fu is his nickname, and he's really good striking. It's a killer nickname. I love the nickname. It's awesome. Going up against Zaleski Dos Santos at 8,000. Dos Santos, capoeira background, can strike pretty well, does have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to resort to. Both these guys, you have 14 finishes for Salikhov and 17 finishes for Dos Santos. The problem is Dos Santos, the smart path to victory should be take Salikhov down and work your jiu-jitsu and get the submission win. I think he's lulled into a brawl here, though, Jason, and I think Salikhov's going to outpoint him either to a decision or get a finish over Dos Santos, because I think there's levels to this. And despite the fact that Dos Santos is, aggressive, I think that Salikhov, as long as he can avoid the takedowns, I think that he's an okay fighter to put in your pool. His average fight time is 9 minutes and 15 seconds, so he does finish fights. the problem is his output. He's only throwing 2.92 strikes per minute. If you think about that, that's somewhat of a patient fighter like that. Yeah, I don't know. If they don't land that perfect shot, they're either going to be behind on the scorecards or a finish isn't going to come. So it's a fight that I'm a little bit more underweight than I think you are, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you always talk about that 8,000, 8,200 matchup. I think that I just believe that when we're talking about looking for fights that are going to end with a finish, I think this is one of those fights that I'm looking at. Next up, we got Makwan Amirkhani taking on Danny Henry. 8,600 for Amirkhani, 7,600 for Henry on DK. On FanDuel, $19 for Amirkhani, $11 for Henry. Then over on SuperDraft, 1.2 times for Amirkhani and 1.5 for Danny Henry. Of course, Danny Henry coming off that loss against Dan Ige. Prior to that, man, he had a super impressive quick win against Hakeem Dawodu, a guy that a lot of people were very high on. For Makwan Amirkhani, is he's got been in the UFC now for some time. He's beaten the guys that you expect him to beat.
Yeah.
But then when you look at his two losses are against guys that you necessarily wasn't expected to beat, Arnold Allen and Shane Burgos. What's your take on this one?
So, inflated price tag for Amirkhani based on his takedown potential. Amirkhani has 16 takedowns in 7 fights, which is really, really impressive. And you're like, oh my God, I need him. He might take the guy to Takedown City because he has 18 advances to go along with that. But then if you look at his DraftKings scores, like if you're averaging 3.39 takedowns per fight, right? How are you only having 75 DraftKings points? Like, to me, it's like, what the heck are you doing? Are you laying and praying? And then I look at his output. He's only throwing 1.6 significant strikes per minute, Jason. That's a little worrisome. So, maybe he's hunting next. And from what I've seen, he does like to go the grappling route and hunt for some submissions. But guess what? So does Danny Henry. And I think Danny Henry can do the same exact thing. If I go over and I look, Amirkhani is averaging 1.5 submission attempts per fight, whereas Danny Henry's averaging 2.7. Danny Henry, he knows Amirkhani's not going to stand, and we've seen Amirkhani struggle in the past with his cardio against Shane Burgos, and that's basically why he lost that fight, was based on fatigue, getting outpointed and all that. And then I don't know if he's fixed that and fixed the cardio issues. Maybe this is a nice steal for Amirkhani at 8,600. I think the safe play is Amirkhani takes him down and just gets a decision win. But as a punt play, I think Danny Henry at 7,600 is interesting. I like this fight a little bit more than the public, I believe. And I'll be targeting this fight a lot because I think it's going to be a lot of grappling and somebody's getting finished, in my opinion.
I'm going to throw you some the prop bets out there on the finishing rate for this one.
Okay.
Danny Henry by TKO KO plus 700. Amirkhani by TKO KO plus 815.
Yeah,
Henry
good.
by submission plus 625. Amirkhani by submission plus 160.
Yeah, so they think Amirkhani's going to go in there and just wax him, and it could happen. We saw Dan Ige do it, and Amirkhani does have great takedowns. He does. It's just if he doesn't get a submission win, the guy's not throwing enough to really, pay off that salary. So for me, like I said, the safe play is Amirkhani here. I'll have plenty of him, but I'll have a few with Danny Henry based on the potential. He just choked out Hakeem Dawodu. It's pretty impressive.
Of course, this is the UFC 251 DFS strategy show, and we are sponsored by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today by using the promo code Awesemo10, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. Now, many sports may be on hiatus, but Awesemo Plus isn't. Sign up today for a platinum package, which includes access to all the Awesemo Plus projections, tools, and content for PGA, esports, NASCAR, MMA, soccer, and KBO baseball. You can review your membership options by clicking the Awesemo Plus tab in the upper left-hand corner of the Awesemo.com homepage. Of course, be sure to be following Awesemo on Facebook and Instagram, as we will be providing free Awesemo Plus player projections for UFC 251, which this week is Jorge Masvidal. Be sure to check that out on our Instagram page at Awesemo_com and our Awesemo Facebook page daily. So make sure to give those accounts a follow. Next up, we've got a fight that Leonardo Santos versus Roman Bogotov. Leonardo Santos, 8,800, 7,400 for Roman, $19 on FanDuel for Leonardo Santos, $12 for Roman on FanDuel. Then over on the SuperDraft side, 1.25 times for Santos, 1.5 times for Roman.
Yeah, tough fight. Very tough fight. You're talking about a guy, Santos, who is 40 years old, and he's kind of like, he's the anomaly of age and getting into the UFC and having some experience. I mean, he has a knockout win against Kevin Lee, which aged pretty well. I mean, that was quite some time ago, but eventually you always say it, man, father time's undefeated, and you wonder when that's really going to come knocking. And, I don't know if Bogotov's the guy to do it. He's 10-0. He's aggressive. But outside of that, I mean, he does have 6 finishes. I just don't see him being able to put Santos in such a bad position. Santos is an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner. He really could submit anybody, and I'm not kidding when I say that. The guy is 17-4, and he does have 12 finishes himself. So he does find the neck of a lot of people and gets into advantageous positions. Striking-wise, though, you got to worry about his output. He's more of a patient type of striker and has landed that perfect shot in the past. But if that perfect shot doesn't land, Jason, you're not really going to have a significant output. And he's only throwing 2.4 strikes per minute. I don't know if I like this fight too much. As an underdog, I don't like Bogotov to get the win over Santos. I think that Santos can do enough to get the decision win.
Timothy Gunther, appreciate the donation in the super chat.
Thanks,
Pete and I appreciate that very much. My concern about Santos is more of if he doesn't get the finish in the first round, will the gas tank be in there, in second and third round? That's my only question mark in that one. But, Santos, he could easily score 100 points, and he may need to look at him. Would I want to pay 8,800 for Santos or 8,900 for Kamaru Usman? It's a pretty easy decision in my mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think he's going to be one of the most contrarian plays. Santos could be severely underowned and go out there and get the submission win over the, over-eager Bogotov, who's trying to do too much and really isn't comfortable in the UFC yet. And, he's done it against UFC high-caliber fighters. Why can't he do it against the newcomer Bogotov?
Then we got a heavyweight matchup, Marcin Tybura taking on Maxim Grishin, who took this fight on he took it at some point last week. So the original opponent came down with COVID, even though he had one positive test and there was a negative test, but ultimately the UFC put it out there. This is my concern about Grisham in this spot. Is he big enough?
I don't think so. And we've seen him in the past. He's significantly undersized for the heavyweight division. And, he's lost to some people by getting taken down a lot. And, he has great knockout potential. Grishin's 30-7 and has 21 finishes. But you have to think that's outside the UFC. So obviously that finish rate is going to be a little bit inflated. Marcin Tybura, you already know what you're going to get from him. He's 5-5 in the UFC, but in saying that, he's fought some of the top guys, Fabricio Verdum, Derek Lewis. The guy has been able to hang in there with some tough fighters. Outside of getting hit with a big shot, I like Marcin Tybura here. He does have 13 finishes in 18 victories. I like Marcin, man, and the reason I like him is because he has 13 takedowns in 10 fights, and with those 13 takedowns, Jason, 24 advances. 24 advances. That's pretty significant. And for a guy that's taking the fight on last minute notice, has been taken down a lot in the past, doesn't really have the best ground game. Marcin Tybura is a big guy. And the stats that I just mentioned, I think Marcin Tybura is one of my favorite 7,000 options. And, in the previous matchup, I didn't like it so much. I thought he'd get tossed around the cage and thrown and ragdolled, but I like him here at 7,900, and it hurts me to say.
Then we got Paiva versus, I'm just going to call him Double Z. I am not going to try to butcher that name at all.
Zamagulov. Ooh.
You go with that. That sounds pretty right on. 8,700 for Paiva. Double Z, he's 7,500. $18 for Paiva on FanDuel, $13 for his opponent. Then on SuperDraft, 1.25 times for Paiva, and Double Z 1.5 times.
Yeah. So Paiva has some potential in the division. Outside the UFC, he was on a roll. Then comes into the UFC, and his record sits at 1-2 now. Overall, he's 19-3. He's young. He has only 7 finishes, though, Jason, with 19 victories, and that's a little worrisome. That's pretty crazy. That's not high end at all, but it goes with the division. And 125-pound division, lots of action, little finishes, and we know that. I think that Paiva will be decently popular because people, recency bias. You're thinking about what he just did to Mark De La Rosa. I think Zamagulov could surprise some people because he's like the motor that just keeps going. He doesn't stop. He has good pace. He's fought some good people. Tyson Nam's one of them. Outside the UFC, he's fought some really high caliber UFC type of talent. And I think that he can kind of, outpace Paiva a little bit in this spot. And even though Paiva throws 4 strikes per minute, I think Zamagulov's a guy, a 7K option that you can circle and definitely sprinkle in some lineups.
Then we got a female matchup, Rosa versus Melo. Rosa, 9,200, 7,000 for Melo, $16 for Rosa on FanDuel, $10 for Melo. And then over on SuperDraft, 1.2 times for Rosa and 1.5 times for Melo.
Yeah, so high output female fight. I'm not too crazy of this fight. Rosa should go in there and get the victory. She trains with Jessica Andrade, has incredible leg kicks, high output in 11 strikes per minute. But in saying that, she absorbed 11 strikes per minute. So she literally stood toe to toe. It's almost like they just didn't move and just swung at each other. I think that she'll take a smarter approach to this fight and try to take less damage if she wants to have success in the UFC. Rosa should win this fight. I'm not really interested in Melo at all. She's one of my least favorite fighters on the card. So Rosa, even, FanDuel salary at 16, she's an absolute steal. Roster her. She's going to get the W.
Then we got the opening fight is Martin Day versus David Grant, 8,500 for Martin Day, 7,700 for David Grant over on FanDuel, 1.45 times for Davey, 1.25 times for Martin. I kind of feel like Martin Day could be a little bit of a popular play here.
Yeah, I think it'd be popular. And because, when you see David Grant's picture and you just, I saw that guy. He doesn't really look like he's that talented, but he's tough. And he has good takedowns. And if you watch Martin Day, he's been taken down on the Contender Series and taken down a lot. And it does seem like he doesn't give up. So he's going to get taken down by David Grant. It's just, can he get back to his feet and get a late finish? Potentially. I think David Grant can, nullify some of the strengths of Martin Day, despite, I think Martin Day is the more skilled fighter. But David Grant at 7,700 is another fighter that could, resort to the takedowns. He does have a win over Marlon Vera, which is blows my mind. When I saw that, I was like, that's wrong. And it's not. 7,700 is not bad. And you could be looking at somebody who could get a decent score, but I don't know if the winner of this fight is really going to be optimal. We'll see.
Before we get to questions and wrap up the show, I'm just going to go down my picks, let you go down your picks. Give me Kamaru Usman. Give me, I'm going Max Holloway. I think he gets the job done. Peter Yan. I'm going to say Rose. Don't feel great about that one. Amanda Ribas. I think that's definitely the way to go. Give me Yuri. Give me Dos Santos. Amirkhani, Santos, Tybura. Give me Paiva. Give me Rosa. And give me Day.
All right, so I'm going to make mine a little bit different than yours, and obviously I don't feel so confident in some people, but I'm going Usman. I'm taking Volkanovski. I'm going to take Aldo. I think he gets it done. I'm going to also go Jessica Andrade, which I don't know why I'm doing that, but I'm doing it. Ribas. I'm going to go Oezdemir. Salikhov. Amirkhani. Santos, Tybura, Zamagulov, Rosa, and Grant. That's what I'm rolling with.
All right, let's get a couple questions here before we get out of here. Don't forget, Saturday Live Before Lock. Me and P will be here to answer your questions for 60, 90 minutes. We'll see how long we go in terms of that one. Ty says cash score for FanDuel.
Okay, so somebody that stuck out to me would be Rose at $16. I think that's a steal, especially based on her potential. I would say that I don't know if I'd pay 22 for Kamaru Usman. I think Volkanovski at 18 is not bad.
In terms of, he also asked about $15 and under plays. You got a favorite?
15 and under. Guess I got to roll Jose Aldo, man. I love Jose Aldo.
I mean, I know you're picking Aldo here, but Samuel asked, will Jan pay his price?
I don't know. I don't know. He's a patient guy. He's a very patient guy. He doesn't throw too much. I mean, 5 strikes per minute, but that's against lesser competition. And sometimes you can just, go a little bit more recklessly than when you have Jose Aldo, the legend, standing in front of you, and you're a little tripped out and trying not to get cracked and knocked out. So I think Peter Yan could be a little bit more conservative than what we're used to.
Samuel makes this suggestion. Let me get your take if you agree with him. To be in the top 3%, you may need a 2-4 setup. 2 favorites, 4 underdogs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it makes sense based on being contrarian and ownership and leverage and all that. I think some big leverage positions could be straying away from Holloway, straying away from Yan, straying away from Namajunas. You know what I mean? Like VanZant's the ultimate leverage play, but I can't get behind that.
Timothy asked, besides the title fight, what other fights do you see ending in a finish?
I think Usman could get he's not a finisher. I think Volkanovski does it. I think he gets a finish. I think Aldo can do it. Outside of that, I'm seeing a lot of decisions, man. Maybe Tybura can get a submission win.
Something to also note, this fight starts 2 a.m. local time in Abu Dhabi. Your main card, 6 a.m. local time in Abu Dhabi. So, and I know one of the things is that the fighters from the U.S. have been trying to stay on U.S. time.
Yeah, that's weird. I'd have to experience it in order to see what I would be doing. But you have to make an adjustment, right? I mean, you have to. Mm-hmm. And I think some fighters that are a little bit more local to that area could have some benefits. Like, I don't know, I guess maybe Peter Yan, more of Zamagalov than anybody, I would say. Bogatov maybe too.
Yeah, just trying to scroll down here to see if there's some other questions. Joel, it says DraftKings best picks. Yan, Volkanovski, Amirkhani, and Volkan are his top 4.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to avoid Peter Yan. I'm going to have some Peter Yan. I just have to find a dog that I can get behind and where there's going to be a lot of ownership. And I think Yan's going to have a lot of ownership. Holloway's going to have a lot of ownership. So I'm going to go the other way for some of my lineups. But honestly, I think Volkanovski can get a finish over Holloway. That's 541 significant strikes in 4 fights. That's crazy. And I wonder if the whole I've been doing Zoom training is real because, okay, if it's real, right, Martin Day trains with him at the same camp, Jason. So it would almost make me like Volkanovski and Davey Grant a little bit more.
I'll get to a question here before we get out of here. First up from Cameron, appreciate the donation in the super chat. 2 of the 3, Grant, Mello, and Henry.
Oh, God, not Mello. Well, okay. So Mello looked okay on film. I just don't think she does enough to really match what Rosa does. So I like Henry's chance. If you're giving me those 3 options, I like Henry's chance of getting a potential submission. And then Davey Grant's not bad either at just, out wrestling him.
And then and on this one, Scott says Salikhov and Day or Dos Santos and Amirkhani.
I only like in each of those situations. I only like one of them. I guess if you're going knockout potential, Salikhov Day makes the most sense.
Yeah. So that is going to wrap it up for the UFC 251 DFS strategy show. Of course, be sure to be back here on Saturday for Live Before Lock, as Pete and I will be here answering your questions, getting you ready for UFC 251, helping you make some money. Hopefully one of our listeners can win that millionaire contest. If
That'd be nice.
Take it down.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love that. I would love nothing more than for you guys to win big, screenshot it, share it. Best of luck, everybody. Join us on Saturday, and can't wait.
Of course, if you ever have any questions for Pete, hit him up on Twitter. He's at Pete the Heat MMA. I am at Jason_Floyd. So that's going to wrap up for the UFC 251 DFS strategy show right here on Awesemo.com.